Started. All right. Welcome to everyone who's just joining online now. I hope you are all doing well. Please share in the chat where you're calling in from. The IPR team and our speaker would love to know. I'm Communications and Outreach Manager Brittany Higginbotham, and I am thrilled to host Dr. Karen Sutherland from all the way from Australia here today to lead a fantastic webinar. I want to share a few housekeeping notes and key up our speaker briefly, and she's going to go deeper into her background as well. But a few housekeeping notes. This is being recorded and it will be shared. The playback will be shared via our YouTube channel, our website, and everyone who registered will receive a copy in their email. If you have any tech difficulties, just message me and I will help sort anything out. And then we have time for Q&A throughout the session, so please share any questions in the Q&A box. If you have any comments or resources, or you just want to chat with our fellow webinar attendees, please do so in the chat feature. And with that, Dr. Karen Sutherland, I just want to briefly intro her. She has over 25 years experience in marketing and strategic communication. She brings a wealth of knowledge from her time researching at the University of the Sunshine Coast and Monash University, as well as having a wide range of industry practice in a range of industry sectors. She's also a certified AI consultant, multi-award-winning educator, author, and co-founder of Dorana Digital Marketing. And that's just a very brief overview, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Sutherland to take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share this webinar with you. And I'll explain where the content for this webinar comes from in just a second. The title seems a bit overwhelming, I know, but more will be explained as we get going. Okay. Oh, excuse me. So just a little bit of background of, as I said, where this is all coming from. So I've been teaching and researching in the field of PR for about 13 years now. My focus has been on strategic comms and social media. However, in the last few years, I've been fascinated by this explosion of AI. And we know AI has been around for a long time. I mean, it really started in the 50s. But the last few years where it's become more mainstream and accessible to the general public has really sparked, I think, many people's interest and also caused a lot of confusion and fear as well. So I was really focused on trying to learn more for myself so then I could actually share it with others. As along with my academic career, I've always been a practitioner as well. I'm a big believer of in academia, you're developing theories, but I think it's really important that with theories, they don't really have a lot of meaning until you put them into practice and see how they work. And so that has been a core sort of foundation of my career. So I've always practiced alongside working in academia. And as Brittany said, the last 5 years I've been director of Dorana Digital. And even with that agency, it's quite a boutique agency here in Australia. We service people from around the world. And we have a focus on the wellness space, but we do have clients from other sectors as well. And it was sort of a digital agency, you know, SEO, web, social media. But in the last couple of years, because my interest in AI has grown, I've gone and completed a number of certifications and started consulting and training and things like that as well as and delivering that as part of our services. And in terms of my AI expertise, I've completed certifications with the University of Sydney. And I also trained with, he's a marketer in the US called Jeff J. Hunter, and he pioneered the AI persona method. So I've trained as a consultant to be able to teach businesses how to use that method as well. And then recently I was awarded the position of co-director of our local region's chapter of the Queensland AI Hub. So in Australia, Queensland, I live in the state of Queensland, and then they have like a state organisation that is really aiming to increase AI literacy across the state and also increase innovation in the field of AI too. Now, the content from this webinar comes from a book that I spent 11 months last year writing. I knew I had to do it quickly because things are changing so much. And for that book, I interviewed 41 people. Now, these were scholars in AI and strategic communication. There were practitioners, and there were 11 uh, representatives from AI tools. So they were actually AI tool developers, because I thought I wanted to get a range of perspectives to try and make more sense of what is going on and how it is going to impact our profession. And then on top of that, I also surveyed 400 strategic communicators from the US, the UK, and Australia to see their attitudes and perceptions and practices in using AI. And so I developed this book, which I think it comes out next month. But I wanted it is largely a research book. But as I mentioned, I have a strong focus on theory and practice. And so while it has literature reviews and shares research and defines different concepts in the chapter, and then I share my own research, at the end of each chapter, I analyze all of that data to create a practical tool that you can use to actually implement what is covered in that chapter. So the book's in three sections, and the first is sort of your background history of AI and the sort of theories that I've used to do the research, but also ethics and things like risk and things like that. I explore in that section. The middle is all about implementing, so strategy development, writing, video, audio, images, evaluation, like all the things. And I can't go do everything that we do as PR and strategic comms practitioners, but it's a good overview of some of the functions that we actually do in that role, and how AI is impacting them, and sharing that research and creating ways to help navigate that. In the final section, which is I look at the future, which is what this webinar is based on. And what I've done as well is I've pulled together the research from all of the previous chapters to create a model for practice, which is like a process that you can use to begin to implement and integrate AI into your organization and your comms or PR team. And it has a strong focus on continuous improvement. So it's a cyclical thing that you do over and over and over again, because as you know, AI is just keeps booming in terms of its updates and its evolution. And so it sort of helps to guide you in keeping up with that. And so this webinar is all based on the chapter around the future. And so what I've done is I've firstly analyze the literature. And of course, when you're talking about the future of AI, everyone's predicting, everyone's predicting. We can't say 100% this is exactly what's going to happen. So keep that in mind with the info that I share with you. But what I've done is I've brought together a timeline and the key sort of stages from the literature that technologists and other people in the field have predicted are going to be the next stages. And then what I've done is then analysed it from the perspective and in the context of PR and strategic communication, to give you ideas of what that would actually mean for each of our roles, each stage. And then we've also got some guidance at the end on how to try and navigate each of those stages. So we know that that we're in sort of the narrow stage right now, but there's a whole lot of other stages that are to come. And so you'll hear, I think this subheading here about why AI matters for PR professionals, I think that's why you're here, that's why you're interested. But one of the key takeaways, and I want to say this from the very beginning, is that AI is the co-pilot. We're collaborating with AI. It's not there to replace us, and we must be the leader. We must be the subject matter experts when we use AI, because even though we might get to the stage where AI is doing a lot of the functions that we can do as well, or sometimes better than us, it will never have our humanity, and it will never have the ability to build actual human relationships and also build that trust that is so fundamental in the work that we do. because it's all about building trust between the people you're trying to engage with. And it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for AI to do that, to have that emotional intelligence to be able to do that. So I want to sort of set the scene before we continue. Now, based on the literature, this is the timeline of predicted AI evolution, and I'm going to go through each of these stages. So as I said, right now we're in the artificial narrow, the ANI stage. And you can see that with things like generative AI, but I'll explain that a bit more. Next is AI agents, which is it's happening now. So it's funny, in the literature, it was predicted to be between 2025 and 2035. Some AI tools and platforms were already sort of experimenting a little bit with that, like late last year. And then, of course, I think last week, the week before, OpenAI dropped their AI agents. So and that was January. So it was right on the cusp of that. So yeah, so it's actually here. It's not, I think, as widely used yet, of course, but it's happening. Then we move into AGI, which is predicted to be anywhere between this year and 2075. But the way things are going, clearly it is going to be much sooner than 2075. And then after that, we have the stages of technological singularity, which will happen pretty soon after AGI. And then the next big boom is artificial superintelligence. And then after that, it will be known as the post-singularity era. Now, it sounds very sci-fi, I know, but I'll explain what all of this means as we go through. Now, ANI, it's called ANI because it's narrow intelligence. So it's when we're using, for example, ChatGPT, we have to give the instruction. It can really only do like one specific task at a time, not a chain of tasks. I mean, it can, but it doesn't do it very well yet. And this is before AI agents. And so at the moment, I mean, we can save up to 50% or even more on repetitive tasks. And I think this is the one we're using mainly. In my study, people were using AI generally for, I think the greatest case that they were using it for is actually data analysis and evaluation of communication activities. And then the next task they were using it for was generating reports. So report writing was the next one. And so this is where, as I said, you give a very specific instruction, it does that instruction. So it's very much led by the human, and it can only really do sort of one thing at a time. And I think I'll be interested after, when we get to questions, I'd love to know how you're using AI right now in this sort of era of ANI. And next stage is AI agents. And so these are AI tools that can actually, you still have to give it an instruction, but it can actually go off and carry out a series of tasks for you online. So this could be something like getting it to go out and, I guess, check on sort of media responses, or scan websites and bring back information. But you can set the task, and it can do things like, it can look at your screen, it can click, it can scroll, it can do normal functions on a computer. So any task related that you could actually use that for is what an AI agent can do. You still have to give it the prompt and the instruction, but it's a bit more autonomous than ANI. And what my research showed was that in my sample, 41% said AI agents will be the way that we can actually really enhance personalization, because it'll be able to go off and on its own really customize communications to suit particular people in terms of name, location, those sorts of things. It could be used in, say, as a scenario in sort of a crisis response. So it could actually, you could get the AI agent to go off and actually monitor what the global media is saying, and then draft the media release response. and also do sentiment analysis around that particular issue. So it could just go off, as long as you prompt it, it could go off and do those things and bring that information back to you. However, the human, as the person overseeing this, will need to ensure that it's correct, and also that it aligns with brand voice and things of that nature. It will make things much faster. You'll be able to, rather than you manually going out and doing this stuff yourself, it'll be much easier for it to bring it back to you in a timely way. But again, it's still important that you are checking and making sure that it aligns with the communication you would normally put out for your organization. Another way it could, as scenario two, is it could help you to handle all of your vendor communication and scheduling for an event. So it would actually plan out what you need to do for the planning of that event, and then communicate with who it needs to be communicated with, and in the lead up to organize that event. But again, your focus could then be on the storytelling behind and the branding behind that event. But again, I still recommend, of course, you need to check and see what's going on. And so OpenAI dropped their operator. We don't have it here in Australia yet, and which is really sad. I was so excited to play with it, so hopefully soon. But I know there's been people using it to clean up their email, or go and search for the best sort of holiday and destination details of where they actually want to go. And you can do a range of tasks online by just setting your prompt, and it can just go off and do it and bring it back for you. So I guess the span of tasks it could actually help you with is pretty enormous, and it's one where you would have to actually experiment, but be very careful about it sending off information on your behalf. I would still be very wary about that. If anyone has played with OpenAI's operator, I would love to hear from you as well when we have our discussion at the end. Now, artificial general intelligence seems to be the holy grail that a lot of AI organizations are aiming for. And what's a bit worrying is they tend to be sort of competing with each other and not really focusing much on the safety side of things, it seems. And so it was expected that this would be happening between 2030 and 2050, but I think it's going to happen sooner than that, generally because we're moving faster than I think was originally predicted. And there are so many AI companies in the world working towards this, so it may happen sooner rather than later. And now this is where AI achieves human level intelligence, and it can reason and learn, it can correct itself, and it does this sort of on its own to keep improving on its own. It's said to be able to think critically and problem solve as well, and be quite creative like a human, but it's still at human level. And we're not really there yet that we know of with this. So OpenAI's their recent model they put out, O3, it actually performed very well on a test which is called the ARC-AGI test, and it performed, I think it got in the 80s in terms of percentage on this test, whereas before the best performance from an AI tool or AI model was like 55. So it did well, and it actually outperformed some humans as well. However, it only did well. It did well on that test, so it failed at other sort of less complex tasks. So it has shown that it has the ability to be at AGI level, but not consistently. So we're not there yet. And I remember when this happened, people were coming out going, AGI is here. But it performed at AGI levels on that, absolutely. But then there were reports to say that it wasn't consistent for all tasks. So with AGI, it's consistent across everything as at a human level intelligence. And so what this could mean for us as strategic communicators is that AGI could actually automatically adapt your messaging for you for a range of diverse cultural contexts. So It could change it into different languages. And also sometimes when you do translate into other languages, sometimes it misses some things, it misses the mark. The direct translation doesn't really work so much, but it would know how to actually do that successfully so that it did the same meaning was going across across different cultures with that one piece of communication. But again, you would need to review that as the human, being the human in the loop. But it would mean that you will be able to communicate further, faster, and with a whole range of people, more so than ever before. And while AI now can translate pretty well, this would be more of a, you still have to make that happen. Whereas this, you could set it up in the beginning and then it would just do it for what you set it up for, the different languages and cultural contexts that you wanted. It would just do it automatically. Next, we move into technological singularity. And it sounds very scary. And I apologize for the image there. I tried to find something. I really hate using robots in AI presentations. But this was, from the prompt I gave, this was the best that I could get out of Midjourney. So it doesn't mean we're going to be merged with AI by any means, but it means that AI will actually surpass human intelligence. So this is said to happen 2050 and beyond, and it will grow faster than ever before. So once AGI hits, like we think it's moving fast now, it's predicted to move much faster and keep improving, because as I said, with AGI, it can keep learning and improving on itself, and so it will just keep going. And in terms of the literature around this, one of the big things that has come out of it is just the challenges will be around how humans can maintain being in the loop and maintain their power to be able to oversee what's the AI is actually doing. And there will be sort of ethical issues around that, more so than we even have today. The upside, though, is that it will be able to, the scenario here is saying disaster communication. It will be able to know what's going on based on the data that's coming out around what's, just for example, if it's a flood, we get a lot of floods here in the part of Australia where I live. So it would actually be able to tap into that real-time data of what's going on, and then craft evacuation instructions, but in a way that is empathetic and human-like, but definitely not human, during a disaster. So it will mean that it will be able to act much faster than we ordinarily would be able to get people out and safe. But it also needs to make sure that the human is there to check that it does actually align with the values of a particular community, if it was happening in that community, because they would still have that human understanding of that and the relationships in that community as well. And then the final stage is artificial super intelligence. And there's been some sort of talk in the literature around this as well. And even some commentators have, in sort of marketing spaces, have started to talk about this, but it's not going to happen. It's said to happen after 2050. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, but the way things are moving, I cannot be 100% sure that it may not be sooner. Now, this is where AI surpasses human intelligence across all domains. So this is any sort of area, it consistently performs better than humans do. And this includes in terms of creativity, problem solving, emotional understanding. But, I think that we don't know about that yet. I still think that humans will, it'll be very hard to actually replicate what a human can do in terms of connecting with other humans. And it differs from AGI because AGI sort of matches human intelligence, whereas this goes much further than that. And it's predicted to be able to help humanity solve a lot of the wicked problems that we are unable to solve. Things around sort of environment, poverty, disease, those sorts of things where our scientists, work and devote their whole lives trying to make some progress to solving these issues. But it's said that artificial superintelligence will be able to solve those, which is exciting. It really is. And in terms of public relations and strategic communication, an example could be, say, in a crisis, it would be able to actually know that the crisis would sort of predict the crisis before it even happens, which is pretty amazing. By just looking at vast data sets, looking what's happening online, and it could alert you that what's going to happen and also craft the response. So it would be able to analyze and, first of all, have access to, analyze, and then develop responses and analyses and recommendations. And in many cases, be able to actually respond on your behalf, because it will know the way that you want it to respond. And so that's pretty exciting as well. But again, there are challenges around that. There's a loss of that human oversight, and it's going to be really difficult for humans to be able to maintain their control over that. This is predicted to be where a struggle between the AI and humans will, it sounds very outlandish, I know, but in the literature, they're saying that at this point, this is where the struggle is going to happen, where between maintaining power over the AI to make sure that we're the ones driving it and it's not driving us. And the other thing is about dependency. So, and this was another key thing that came out of my research. So in terms of fears surrounding the use of AI by strategic communicators, the first one was job displacement. And so there's a real worry. And I mean, if we're talking about these sorts of stages in AI, then it is a very, very real concern. The other one was around over-reliance. So if we become too reliant on AI for our roles, then it's going to be much more difficult to keep our skills up and know how to actually act and react in certain situations that aligns with what we're meant to do in our professional roles. And so that's going to be a big issue going forward, is if the AI can do it better than us, then certain things, then will we lose our ability to be able to actually do it for ourselves? In terms of my research, just some other stats I wanted to share with you. In terms of the survey, people were generally excited. So about half, if you see there. So half were excited, little less than half were optimistic, and about 44% were intrigued by it. But the main concerns, as I said, are job loss, over-reliance, and misinformation. And I think misinformation is a huge one. If we look at even today with the developments in AI, and also, I mean, the removal of certain standards from social media platforms around sort of fact checking and things like that, it's going to be harder for people to be able to determine what is true and what is false. We can even look at things like deepfake technology is getting so much better that it will become very difficult to understand whether that's actually the real person saying those things on video or audio. And it's a real risk for not only misinformation in terms of damaging information that can be quite dangerous for people around health issues and things like that, but also organizational reputation. I mean, if someone's creating a deep fake of your CEO and going out and making it look like they're doing or saying something in particular that is against your values, then that's going to be a real issue going forward. In terms of the interview findings, out of the 41, so 22% predict that we're going to, of course, adoption is going to increase. And then, I mean, that's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? It's happening. But 17% were really clear on sort of automation. And so I think some tasks can definitely be automated in terms of AI, but with your oversight. But there are still some things that are really important that we have a much greater role in how those tasks are undertaken. And then 10% are really for AI enhancing personalization. And personalization in the sense that, so I remember I read a study as part of my research for this book where they used it on video. So I think it was on the Alibaba platform. And so they personalized videos according to people's shopping and purchase history, and people bought, like, they increased their spend normally than what they normally would, because it was actually personalized and shared products that they would like. So rather than, on Amazon it says, other people that bought this might like, but this was actually a video showcasing those things. So being able to actually personalize using that data around purchase history, and then really personalizing people's interactions on particular platforms using the AI to actually do that. And I know it happens now already, but it will happen at a much greater scale. So it'll be almost like every time you go onto your computer, everything is customized around your previous preferences and the different sort of decisions you've made online. Now, the main takeaway is that, as a profession, and clearly I didn't have a huge sample, but it was, out of my sample, people are optimistic, but they're also very cautious, and they can see the great potential with AI, but also, the concerns around ethics and misinformation and those sorts of things. And I think it's like with every new technology. I mean, even with social media, if we go back when that was just emerging, I mean, there's always, people can use it for good in sort of amplifying positive messages and fostering deep connections and building communities and giving voices to people who necessarily never had a voice before online. But on the other hand, it can actually be used in really negative ways as well. And I think this is the same sort of sentiment here with AI. It has the potential to do so many amazing things. However, it also has the potential to do a lot of damage as well. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. Here's a quote from one of my interviewees who just sort of echoes that sentiment as well. So when I interviewed him, it was just slowly being adopted into practice. People were still very cautious. They might use it sort of a little bit, but he predicted that people are going to take it up more and more. And even when I analysed the survey data in terms of adoption rates, there were only 14% of my sample at that stage even using it every day. The most sort of common use was around maybe 2 to 3 times per week. So it'd be interesting to hear from people how often they're using it as well. Are you using it every day now, or you're just using it every now and again, or not even using it at all yet? It's sort of an interesting topic to talk about. And Jesper also said, around using it to speed up content production, so that humans can actually look at more of the strategic and creative side, which has been a key theme in my research as well, like letting the AI do what can be automated, and then with oversight, but then allowing and freeing the human up to be able to develop strategies and build those relationships that I talked about in the beginning, and build that trust. Now, some actionable steps. Now, let me tell you how I came with this list and derived this list. Basically, when I was doing my chapter, I actually started collaborating with, I think I used ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, because I often use a range of tools at the same time and give them the same prompt and just compare what they come back with, because they often have different perspectives. And so I asked that, okay, during this stage, what would strategic communication professionals need to know to be able to navigate safely and successfully through each stage of AGI. And so for AI and AI agents where we are now, so just upskilling in prompt engineering, really important. Because if you think about it, writing prompts it's a communication skill. Like, it's a communication skill on its own. So really understanding and learning how to write those to get back what you need from the AI is really, really important. And also learning how to strategically and safely and ethically integrate it into your practice. So not doing it in an ad hoc way, but actually having a plan where you will do an audit and then find use cases and then implement the overall strategy, looking at training and your staff regularly, and even making sure that you have your ethics policies around AI, and also remembering that you need to audit what you're doing as well to make sure that it's actually working in a positive. I think there's a lot of focus on speed and cost saving with AI, but not a lot of focus on what is using AI to create materials and interact with people. What is their experience? What are your customers' experience, or your target audience's experience being the person interacting with the AI? Are they happy with it? Because ultimately they're the people you're trying to build the relationships with. So automating repetitive tasks where you can, and then your guidelines, as I said. Now with AGI, it's really then focusing on your creating the strategy, and then AGI is doing the execution of that strategy. So you're the one. It's almost like having someone else creating the content and doing all that based on the strategy will be able to do it for you. But then also having some emergency protocols around if the AGI fails. Because if you think about it, if the power goes down, we're all back to doing things the way that we normally would without the help of AI. And so it's really important to make sure that we still have those skills to be able to jump in and do the job when we can't rely on AI. And then building frameworks to make sure that human oversight remains, that we don't become lazy and go, okay, just let the AI do it, and making sure that we're being creative in that. Because at this stage, I don't know, I mean, I've played a lot with the video, like Sora and the image generation tools. And while it sort of almost gets what I want, it's still not 100% there. So making sure that we're still remaining the creative sort of powerhouse driving what we're doing in our roles. Finally, in the technological singularity era, it's funny that AI, when I was collaborating, they all said that this is where it's going to be a case where humans are actually going to have to fight to maintain their relevance, which is really interesting. If you think about it, we need to, because if the AI can do it better than higher than a human level, it's said that we'll have to really show that we are still relevant to be involved, which is kind of scary when you think about it. Another thing it said was that, which was also kind of interesting and kind of scary too, is that it recommended that if a human is the head of an organization, to make sure that that position is never left for the next person to come in, just in case AI jumps in and actually takes over. And this is what the AI said in the, which is, I know it sounds very sci-fi and outlandish, but this is, that was kind of interesting what it came back with. It'll also need us to be able to adapt strategies as well. So while if we're still developing those strategies, we'll need to be able to be very fluid, because when things change and things are going to be very fast, even faster than they are now, we'll need to be able to move with those. Making sure that emotional intelligence, us who have emotional intelligence as humans, will be able to still be involved in the decision making around what happens, and then just having those contingencies in place in case things don't work. So Yes, so this again, it seems very sci-fi at this stage, but some of it I think is good advice. Now, in terms of next steps, leaving just starting out, 50 years, 2050 plus, and then coming back to now, um, I recommend really starting small in terms of your AI use and having that strategy. In the book, what I've done is, as I mentioned, I've pulled together all the research to come up with it's an integration strategy. It's a model for practice to take through the steps of how to implement in a strategic and ethical and safe way. Um, so using tools for efficiency, but having that close human oversight. One of the scariest pieces of scariest statistics that came out of my research was that out of the survey sample, more than 40% deemed fact checking AI generated content only moderately important or less. So this means that at this stage, hallucination is a very real flaw in what AI is doing. And more than 40% aren't even fact checking. There was a study that came out late last week. Ethan Mollick, he's a great person to follow on LinkedIn in terms of AI. He shared some research from some other researchers where they used AI agents, 3 AI agents, to fact check each other. And it reduced hallucination by 97% across about 310 use cases, which is very promising in that respect, but it's not available now. So as you know, AI makes things up all the time, and it tries to it fabricates things just to give you what it thinks you want. So it's even with now with web search integrated into some platforms, you still need to check those sources. And the other surprising statistic that came out was that nearly 50% of the survey sample were not editing AI generated outputs, which is terrifying to say the least. So they were just getting it, and I don't know, but I don't think their prompts were that good to be able to get things out. I mean, the editing and synthesizing part of AI content generation is just so important in that you're checking that it aligns with brand voice, you're doing the fact checking, that it fits the platform. And, I mean, we see on social media when someone has just copied and pasted from AI, and it's so cringy. So it's really important to maintain that human oversight. Also look at getting your organization to have an AI policy and process around its use. What I've seen happen is that some senior management might think, oh, it's not an issue yet, and yet you've got junior members of the organization just using it. One case I know of happened here in Australia where, and this is anecdotally, it was for a software company where the junior marketing members of the marketing team were so happy they were flying through their work. And someone I know who's on the sales executive team was a bit confused as to how they were doing this social media content so quickly, and looked on LinkedIn, and there was a post on LinkedIn for this software that said it did all of these things, had all of these features that it didn't even have. So the marketing team, they didn't know the product, and then they were putting out incorrect information copied and pasted from ChatGPT to promote the product. So it's really important to have some guardrails in place around its use, because people are using it, and it's better to have some rules around how they can actually use it. And have an integration strategy, so then everyone knows what's next and the time frame and that sort of thing. And please really include regular training in there, even if you're just sharing things, because it's moving so quickly. Doing one training once a year, it's just not enough. So it's really important to have that sort of ongoing upskilling of AI. If you need any help with that, please feel free to reach out. You can just reach out to me on LinkedIn, or these are my details here. You're most welcome to book in a time. I work internationally, so the Australian time zone is not great, and so I do things at all hours. So it's perfectly fine if you book in a time that works for you. That isn't so great for me. I'm sort of used to working at strange hours, so that's fine. And I'm really focused on, based on my research and experience in helping organizations to um, integrate AI in a safe way into your workflows. And if you need help with policy development or even training and workshops, I'm working with an organization now an agency where I do a monthly check-in with them. And so we look at how they were going with using AI for the last month. And then we also look at what they're going to do for the next month. And then I give them updates, and sort of we train on something as well if they want to learn something new. So it's just a regular check-in to keep up to date. And clearly I can do speaking opportunities as well. I'm planning to actually come to the States in October. So yeah, so if keep me in mind, and I might be able to come for a visit and do a talk while I'm over there. And
Oh,
so in closing, um, remember that AI, it empowers us, but we have to be so heavily involved in its use. And it's a collaboration. It's definitely not a replacement. So making sure they're the human in the loop. And IPR have amazing AI resources. So there's a link there on the slides, but they have a whole area of their website with excellent articles and resources that can help you. And I would like to just put it out there. I can see there's quite a few questions in to come, but it'd be interesting to see how are you using AI in your practice, or if you have any questions about the presentation, please feel free to share. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful. Yes, we have quite a few questions, so we'll do our best to get to all of them. Let's start with one in the Q&A box. How do you budget for ANI and agents and measure outcomes?
Budget for What was the question? How do you budget for AI agents?
ANI and
Oh, AI,
agents.
how you budget? Well, personally, I spend too much on subscriptions. So I guess in my research, people they weren't investing a lot. What they did was find a tool that I guess was sort of multimodal. Most people were paying for ChatGPT because it can generate images and it can do a whole range of things. And many of them were also paying for Canva, of course, because in terms of graphics and video, Canva's got a lot of AI features as well. In terms of budgeting, I guess it's around, that's where that audit I think is really important, really auditing the tasks that you do, and then weighing up, okay, how can we integrate AI to make this more efficient? And then I guess weighing that up with the cost of the tool. Like if we save time using this tool, um, how much money would we save by doing that as well? And then sort of balancing it across the cost. There are some tools, and that's the thing, and they seem to be changing their pricing structures all the time. But I think there are some really great free tools around, but the paid versions normally do perform a lot better. But it depends on what you're going to be using it mostly for, in a nutshell. So that's where the really auditing and working out what tasks you do now that could actually be assisted with AI, and then looking at, is there a tool that can help with more than one of those tasks, so then you're getting more for your money that way. That's what I recommend.
Okay, thank you. Another question in the Q&A. For some of the more advanced stages of AI, I'm curious about how the field is discussing surpassing or performing better than humans in something like creativity. Who's going to set the standard that AI is performing better?
That's a very good question. There is nothing that I know of in our field that is actually going to measure that. That's a really good question. It's more the developers have tools to see where to test the AI at certain stages of its evolution. And so they're the ones at the moment who are actually setting those standards, not us. So maybe that's something we need to do. Maybe as an industry, we decide when it's actually surpassed human intelligence, because we'll be the ones to test it in our professional context to see if that's happened. But no, I like that question.
Awesome. Let's see. So, how do you think AI will affect the use of power? It will surely need a lot. How will this affect other power needs in the world?
Oh, it's terrible. It is a huge drain on power, and you can see people are building, like, I mean, even here in Australia, I went to a tech festival, and there's an Australian guy who's done he's actually building like this huge supercomputer, and the power it's going to need is it's going to be the size of a football field, just to be able to power this thing that he's creating. It's a huge worry. It's a huge drain. Hopefully, the AI will come up with a solution to that, because I don't know that we have. And I think I mean, there was talk when DeepSeek came out a couple like week or so ago that it's not using as much power, but there wasn't a lot of like information around that either. So I just wonder if there will be a way that we'll be able to actually do it, which is not so damaging to the environment. But yeah, actually is a really big issue.
Yes, great question. Let's see. In your research, did you find examples of comms teams helping to lead the rollout of Gen AI across organizations, or are they more focused on their own use of Gen AI?
Yeah, look, I think there were one or two that were doing that, and what they actually, it was actually really strategic how they did it, because first of all they were sort of right on it from the beginning and made sure their team were upskilled and on top of what was going on, but also people on their team were really interested and enthusiastic about wanting to learn more. So I think that really helped when you're sort of forced someone in your organization, to say you're the AI champion, and they're like, I don't even want this extra thing, but they were genuinely interested, and that helped. And then they helped along with the CEO to craft the policy and the rollout and that sort of thing. Because in our role, we're boundary spanners, where we have relationships with all the different departments. So we're in a really good place to be able to do that rollout. And so, yes, so there were, I think, one or two teams that did that, and it worked very successfully because they already had the relationships and they were great communicators, which helps, and were able to really do that rollout in a way that was encouraging, but also show that they the concerns and the ethics side of it, and communicating the risks around it as well. They did it in a way that people understood and sort of respected them for it as well. So yeah, and I think communicators are. It was like, if you remember social media, if you remember when that came out, so many decision makers were, no, don't want to do it. Let's just not. Let's avoid it. And then it tended to be up to the communication department to get people on board and get that buy-in to show that it actually can be a positive thing. And I think this will be the case with AI.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see, we still have time for a few more questions. Let's see. So where is training or upskilling going to come from? Are businesses going to develop these skills internally? Are companies going to rely on AI consultancies to train? What is going to drive enterprise adoption across the industry, given the generally low adoption you cited earlier?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's and just like what happened with social media and the web, so many people have popped up to say, oh, I know I'm an AI expert. There's so many AI experts out there, but what I found is a lot of them focus on their own use. So that's why I was so keen to go out and do this research. So I think there are a lot of sort of certifications and places where you can do it. A lot of universities now offer training as well, which can give sort of more of a broad view of AI and the sort of risks and what it can do from an organizational level. But I think it will be a combination of it in terms of how to actually integrate that training. So I think having like a community of practice is always good because that helps people share what they're doing and learn from each other. But then I think it's good to have someone who is really immersed in that space externally to come in and get you up to speed regularly as well. So it can be a combination. Even one of the interviewees said even possibly sharing with other communication teams and from other organizations as well and coming together to do training and to share best practice and those sorts of things. So just actually seeing it as like a learning community is, I think, a really positive thing to do. But I think it's good to have both internal and external. But the training side of it, there's a massive gap in the training. One of the findings from my research was that people are scared about it taking their jobs, but they're not training in AI to sort of prevent that. So it's this sort of paralysis that's happening. So I think just being more proactive in upskilling is really a good thing to do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's maybe do one more question. So government departments often play catch up with new technology. How can AI be used effectively by departments in crisis management, in particular where a crisis has serious reputation implications?
I think, I mean, one of the key things I think it does reasonably well at the moment is doing that social listening and sentiment analysis is sometimes it's good, sometimes it gets it wrong, but that social listening side of it is really good because it can bring back and show you conversations that are happening about your organization so you can manage the issue before it turns into a crisis. So I think that's probably the key way. It can help you to craft communication, but again, you need to be heavily involved in the editing of it. It can do sort of the first draft. I call AI a first draft generator. It can help when it's you need to do it quickly. You could have your prompts or prompt template ready to then do it and get that going. Media releases, things like that. It can help you to do those quickly. But again, you still need to spend that time to edit and make sure that it's aligned with your organizational values.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we will stop there with questions today. But as you mentioned, you were very kind in sharing your contact information. And so I'm sure that please, reach out to Karen for any
Thank
follow-up
you. Yeah.
questions.
And I
Thank
just like to talk
Yeah.
about this topic as well. So I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah. And so many people, it was great seeing everyone so engaged and with so many questions. It's a shame to not be able to get to all of them, but it really shows how important this topic is. And I'm just glad we can connect everyone here. And I will say, everyone, every resource shared in the chat today or that Karen mentioned, I'll make sure you all have that in the webinar recording, which I will get to you all within 24 hours. So stay tuned for all of that. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever time it is where you are. But thank you all. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share my research with you.
Of course. All right. Bye bye.